In 2023, Nicholas Hoult starred in Renfield as Renfield. It was an action comedy and a modern day imagining of Dracula as portrayed by Nicolas Cage that focused on the toxic, codependent nature of these two very well-established characters. If you haven't seen this movie, please, you check it out. It's fun. It's fresh. It feels like something different with a pair of very well-worn legacy characters. Here's what's interesting. About a year and a half later in 2024, the exact same Nicholas Hoult starred in Nosferatu, the gothic horror remake from Robert Eggers. If you are somehow unfamiliar with the story of Nosferatu, it is literally a cheap knockoff of Dracula. Nicholas Hoult's character in the film, Thomas Hutter, is the exact same character as Renfield from Dracula. So, in about 2 years' time, at least release window-wise, Nicholas Hoult played the same character in the same movie, albeit in two diametrically opposite genres. This is weird, but not as weird as Jack Quaid playing oddly similar characters in vaguely similar movies that ended up being released within practically a single month of each other. I suppose, follow me on this one here, I suppose that with the powerhouse of rom-coms having faded into the annals of history, something and someone had to hold up the typecasting torch. Maybe? My name is Crumbine, and this is Emergency Creative, a place where I, broadly speaking, talk about creative expression, creative process, and mental health. However, it is, as I am learning, virtually impossible to be creative all of the damn time. So sometimes we just need to kick back, zone out, and focus instead on refilling our creative fuel tank. Very specifically, these kinds of videos are not reviews. I'm actually not even a big fan of that word or even that format in the first place. Instead, these creative fuel tank videos are more about commentary from a creative perspective, looking at media that inspires the creative brain, hopefully in unexpected ways. Or maybe, just to have a little bit of fun, right? If any of that sounds interesting, be sure to like and subscribe. You can find a dedicated playlist for the Creative Fuel Tank videos in the description below. Jack Quaid's Novocaine came out March 14th, which you've probably heard about and, maybe even seen. What you might not know is that roughly 5 to 6 weeks later, another Jack Quaid flick dropped, this one titled Neighborhood Watch. Now, in both movies, Jack Quaid plays an unlikely schlub of a hero who is either mentally or physically defective in some profound way. In both movies, he is obsessed with a girl he either barely knows or straight up doesn't know. And in both movies, he proceeds to embark on a roughly 24-hour quest to save said girl, all while local police are mistakenly going after Jack Quaid's character instead of the real villains. Obviously, there are much bigger differences between these movies. Novocaine's premise is that Jack Quaid's character doesn't feel pain, turning him into an unlikely superhero, whereas Neighborhood Watch's premise is that Jack Quaid's character is mentally ill and literally sees things that are not there. He has to overcome these personal challenges to prove to himself and others that he has value as a human being. Both movies are perfectly fine. Personally, I felt that Novocaine fell short of its potential. I originally wanted to talk about it alongside Dev Patel's Monkey Man and Bill Skarsgård's Boy Kills World. 3 films with mostly unlikely action hero leads, although Bill Skarsgård, since I think Boy Kills World came out in 2023, and since then he has, of course, become a far more familiar face in this action hero space. But the point remains. And the point, the point is also, if you hadn't picked up on it, I like comparing similar-ish films to see what worked and what didn't work. So, for example, Boy Kills World was the only film in that particular lineup that felt like it lived up to its potential. Telling a story and delivering action, it was an action film that was unique to that film. In as much as that you wouldn't have really expected to see that made by anybody else. Monkey Man felt more like a proof of concept rather than a unique creative vision. Yes, Dev Patel can transform into an action hero. Awesome, right? And yes, he can direct. Double awesome. Good for him. I love to see it. But it didn't really feel like he brought anything especially fresh to the table. Let me put it this way. As a creator, as a storyteller, we have an obligation, a responsibility, if you will, to live up to the potential of our platform, whatever platform that may end up being. Movie in Hollywood or YouTube or SoundCloud or fill in the blank, right? Dev Patel proved he can, but I also really felt like anyone else could have also made Monkey Man. It didn't feel like he brought that unique, individual, special something to his film. So there you go, right? You can get an idea why, if you've seen Novocaine or are familiar with Novocaine, you can start to get an idea as to why I wanted to compare Novocaine to that particular lineup of movies. But when I saw Neighborhood Watch, and I was very surprised that it existed, as I already alluded to, came out barely a month from Novocaine. When I saw Neighborhood Watch, that whole notion of comparison, that whole notion of the lineup went completely out the window. Everything fucking changed because Neighborhood Watch, guys, Neighborhood Watch is a fantastic fucking film that almost no one is going to see. And it is a fucking shame because when you watch these two Jack Quaid films back to back, it is really easy to see how sloppy the back half of Novocaine really is among its other issues. But let's focus on Neighborhood Watch for just a minute. And yeah, I will do my best to keep all of this spoiler free. Broadly speaking, there were these are the negatives right up front. Broadly speaking, there were two flat out bad things about Neighborhood Watch. Number one, as you might already tell, just if you have ears, the title. While thematically appropriate, it still invokes the Ben Stiller, Vince Vaughn comedy from 2012 that ended up being renamed simply The Watch because of the Trayvon Martin shooting. But either way, Neighborhood Watch, those words as a title still feels like it should be a title of a comedy. You know, because the premise would be, you know, neighbors keeping an eye out on their neighborhood, getting in over their head and there's madcap hijinks ensue. It sounds like the premise of a comedy. This movie, Jack Quaid's film, is not by any stretch of the imagination. It had, yes, for me, a few genuine laugh out loud moments, but for example, on IMDb, it is described as a crime thriller. I would say it's more ish in those departments, more of kind of a straight up drama. But genres, you know, when a movie kind of blends genres and it isn't narrowly focused, it becomes really hard to describe. I think that's this film a little bit. At any rate, title. That's the first main issue with this movie. And then the second major issue, if you also have eyes, you will understand where I'm coming from here. The second major issue I had with this movie was Jeffrey Dean Morgan's, I feel weird saying this, his mustache. Yes. Look, if you don't notice it or if it doesn't bother you, that's fine. That's great. But to me, it was very obvious. My one time watching this film, as I'm going through it, it was extremely obvious that the Just for Men hair dye he used on his stash was disappearing throughout the film. Now, I've spent probably entirely too much time thinking about this, and I feel like there could have been an on-screen practical reason for this. Like it could have been established that he was using Just for Men, and when he was washing his face, like it was running out, like, and it was just this thing that this personal aesthetic thing that was really weighing on him as a character. And maybe it just got cut from the film, maybe, but it wasn't there. So the reality as a viewer, we're watching Jeffrey Dean Morgan and his mustache starts out dark. And over the course of about 24 hours, it in the span of the film, 24-hour timeline, it turns very much dramatically salt and pepper or white in some spots, to the point where I actually restarted the movie immediately after finishing it just to be sure. And when you circle back around and after seeing how the movie ends with his white, almost white mustache, the Just for Men black is so jarring at the beginning of the movie. Yes, the color of his mustache changes very dramatically throughout the film. At least it happens consistently. So it's like, it's not like it goes from black to white to black to white. It starts black, ends at white. So I don't know if they just filmed the movie in order, which would be very weird. Which is also why I think I'm spending a lot of time talking about the mustache. I apologize. But that's why I almost think there was a scripted reason for such an anomaly, and it just got cut from the movie. It is a nitpick, but it is also one of those, continuity things that really obviously should have been caught. Since it wasn't, it's weird. But yeah, those were literally my only two complaints about Neighborhood Watch. I'm not going to go deep with my complaints about Novocaine. Again, it's a fine film for what it is. It just doesn't live up to, like Monkey Man, it doesn't live up to everything it could be, that the promise and the genre, the premise rather, and the genre promise you as the audience. Briefly, right? Along with that's the best way I can describe it. It's kind of like a sloppy back half of the film, Novocaine. The film logic was also, it was also a little sloppy too, in my opinion. For example, again, very, very briefly, just an example, and then we'll get back to the better film. Jack Quaid's Novocaine character doesn't feel pain, or is it that he doesn't feel, period, like sensations? No, except he does. That like the feeling of sensations, that does get established. Something about, I think, his nerves not functioning the way they're supposed to, so he literally doesn't feel pain. But he also never eats solid foods because he's afraid he'll bite his tongue off and never know it. And I feel like everyone watching that explanation would instinctively put their tongue between their teeth and bite down, or their molars, and just bite down. Okay, right, sure. He doesn't feel pain, but I feel like he would know, or a person would know, if they are chewing on something that wasn't supposed to be there, right? So for example, if I can't feel pain and I'm eating a steak, I would never eat a steak these days anymore. But if I were eating a steak, something tough, right? I would probably take, and I can't feel pain and I'm worried about accidentally biting myself or hurting myself. I would take really small bites so that like I can feel the sensation of something in my mouth, but not like overload it or anything. Like that's what I'm talking about. Like the logic doesn't hold up. And like yeah, it's almost like a tiny throwaway detail, which would be fine and like whatever. But it was also kind of an important plot point to the story as a whole and a critical insight. It's not a spoiler or anything, don't worry about that. But it is important to the story and a critical piece of insight into the Novocaine character. So again, when that foundational logic for a character kind of falls apart, it's hard. The rest of the movie is going to follow suit. Again, sloppy. That kind of felt that really feels like the best word to describe Novocaine. And if you never notice those things, or if those things don't bother you and you like the movie as is, hey, more power to you. It is fine. Like I said, it's a fine, enjoyable film, it just doesn't live up to its potential. Going back to Neighborhood Watch, Jack Quaid's character suffers from a mental illness that I think goes unnamed, but plays like paranoid schizophrenia. He sees and hears things that are not there. Again, critical plot point to the story, that critical insight to his character. He also portrays what, to me, plays as some flavor of autism spectrum disorder, although I very openly admit that I could be projecting that, which I will get into in a minute with Jeffrey Dean Morgan's character in Neighborhood Watch. My point is that this is a unique and challenging character, Jack Quaid's character in Neighborhood Watch. It's unique and challenging to write a story around a character like this, to portray a character like this, and to actually capture visually on film a character like that and his condition and how that condition affects him. It would have been so easy for the film logic to fall apart. And yet, I never once questioned why these characters persisted in their Quixotean, is that the right phrase, quest to save the girl. Like, if you just look at the story out of context, like the motivation for these characters is in this situation is extremely hard to establish, and at no point did I ever felt like, that the motivation in these characters diverged. I was with them 100% of the way, 100% of the time. The portrayal from Jack Quaid to the director to the screenwriter felt authentic and respectful of the neurodivergent community, regardless of where either of these characters actually were on the spectrum or what they were diagnostically afflicted with. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about Jeffrey Dean Morgan's character. No more about his mustache, but his character, because to my eyes, he was kind of ASD coded as well. Again, yes, I could definitely be projecting personal headcanon here, but I do think it makes a lot of sense for his character, intentional or not. Morgan plays the retired director of campus security, Jack Quaid's neighbor, the neighborhood watch part. But Morgan was apparently forced out of his job into an early retirement or something like that. A job that he was myopically hyper-focused on and obsessed with. He lives alone, has poor social skills, and he stubbornly does things his own way, regardless of social norms. Suffice it to say, I relate. And, maybe it's because of his own neurospicy brain chemistry, the characters, that Morgan's character is able to connect with and help Jack Quaid's character, who is obviously suffering from a far more serious mental affliction, which ultimately cuts to this kind of surprisingly beautiful heart of this crime-ish, thriller-ish film, which is to be recognized as human fucking beings. Whether it is the girl they're trying to save because the cops do not think she's real, whether it is Jack Quaid's character literally screaming to be seen and validated, or whether it is Jeffrey Dean Morgan's character trying to find some kind of personal value outside the job he no longer has. They are all just human beings, desperate to be acknowledged as human fucking beings. That is an idea that has some, extraordinarily deep fucking resonance, especially right now, especially right here in this dumpster fire of a country. And Neighborhood Watch, this film, deserves to be seen by way more people for having the guts to tell that particular story. Novocaine, again, was fine. Neighborhood Watch felt like something. And feeling something. Well, that really is, right, the first step on the path of creative inspiration. I don't know if I will ever tell a story with mental health the way Neighborhood Watch did, but I do know that particular film that's going to be a target I personally will be aiming for in my future writing projects. Have you seen either of these movies or any of the other films that I mentioned? What did you think about them? What do you get inspired to do when a movie makes you feel something so deeply? Let me know in the comments, and until next time, stay creative, friends.